time to time, we have people that have come through this program, gone through this journey, our alumni, come back and speak to you all. And they will come back with a message. And everyone has their own journey. We talk about this all the time. All the time. Everyone has their own story. Some stories are tougher than others. Some a little easier. Some are based off of what life throws at you. And some are based off of the choices, the decisions we make in our lives. I have standing next to me a man, Max Weinberg, who was literally sitting in your seat 6, 7 years ago. He was sitting where you are sitting right now.
That's good.
And as people come through this place, some people take hold of the messages. We have a lot of speakers and a lot of messages that we deliver from this microphone, from down in the Parthenon. Some people listen, some people don't. And then there's some people that get off the track a little bit and make their way back. It's a comeback story that my friend Max is about to share with you. But how he got off the track, the railroads a little bit, off the right track, and how now he's back on the right track. And how his future is brighter than ever. So I want you to welcome an alum who's come before you that's here to share a message with you, and a very important message with you, stuff that we talk about, but this man has lived it. Let's welcome Max Weinberg.
All right. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Bill. That was a nice introduction. Like you said, I remember sitting here not so long ago and looking up at the speaker coming in for that day. I remember them saying that they remember being where I was then. Now it's my turn to say the same thing. When I sat down to write the speech, I had to ask myself, what do I want the campers to take away from it? I think I'll just tell you my story and how I see it. At first, I cared only about myself and how I felt. I thought that was how I could be happy. Perhaps if I had listened while I was here, I would have understood the value of humility, of not putting yourself first, of what that does for you. It wasn't until the pursuit of my own happiness broke me that I found peace. My story is one ultimately about devotion, what I chose to devote myself to, how that failed me, and what I devote myself to now. In 8th grade, I found out about girls. For a while, I felt like I was on top of the world. I had lots of friends and girls like me. This was my buffer against my grades getting worse and worse. I used to take pride in my grades, and I liked science. I liked learning, and I liked pleasing my parents. However, my relationship with my parents was deteriorating. Every time the phone rang, I was terrified it was a school teacher or the principal. When it was, I would say whatever I could say so that I could get out of this uncomfortable situation. There was an incident at school with my friends and some of the girls. I won't go into the details, but suffice it to say that I was mortified. I had fallen from my pedestal. One day, I came home from basketball practice, and my mom asked me about what was going on. She had heard rumors from the other parents. My dad was away on business that day. I started to cry. She started to yell. My brother told my mom that people were being so mean to me at school. My mom started to get angry. I was afraid, and I didn't want to deal with it anymore. I told my mom I didn't want to be around anymore. We called my dad, and he told me how much he loved me, and how that was a permanent solution to a temporary problem. We went to the ER, and they recommended I see a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist told me that I had severe ADHD and depression. My parents were relieved. At least this was an explanation, and we could make a game plan on how to deal with this. I was put on medication and I started to see a therapist. At the end of that year, my dad, my brothers, and I went on this camping trip that we had been going on every year. The thing is, when we went on this trip, my friends and I planned to steal and drink some alcohol. This went about as well as you might expect. There was puking and many bottles missing. All the parents found out. My dad was disappointed and hurt that we had taken advantage of him like that. That I had ruined a bonding tradition and that I had needed more. This began a years-long extension of the fights, which were already taking place with increasing frequency. That first time I had gotten caught, my parents sat me down and they said they were worried. I could see it in their faces. I could see it in their eyes. They said I was on track to be one of those kids in the high school bathroom, skipping class and smoking pot. I was incredulous. Ninth grade came along and things, at first, were quite good. My grades were good, I had a great girlfriend, and it seemed like I might have been over the hump, that I was starting to take charge of my life. And I'm not sure what it was exactly. It didn't happen right away. But my convictions about changing my life were beaten down by the kids I thought were cool, talking about smoking weed. And besides, weed was in the news, and it was going to be legal. Over that year's winter break, I had been planning to hang out with my friend, who I knew had some weed, and we planned to smoke it. I felt amazed, as if I had been bored my whole life, and this is what I was looking for. No surprise, the basement reeked, and my friend's mom knew something was up, and she told my mom. My mom sat me down, more concerned than angry, although she was angry, and she asked me why I smoked. Why wasn't it enough just to hang out with my friends? Why did I need to smoke? I didn't need to smoke. If something was already fun, what was the harm in enhancing that fun? It would take me quite a while to figure out what she meant by that first question. Wasn't it enough? I was in my sophomore year of high school, Halloween was coming up, and I bought LSD, or what I thought was LSD. I was so excited to try it, and I didn't wait for a special time. I bought it, and I got home, and that night I used it. At first, it was fun. But when I wanted to sleep for the night, I could not. The pattern stayed, and I started to wonder how long it would last. Alone in my bed, in the early morning, I could not be saved from my thoughts. I was not good enough, I was a failure, and I was going to kill myself with all the drugs. Everything I pushed under the rug came up and I cracked. I wasn't the same for months, years after, or I didn't feel the same. I was more anxious, self-conscious, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had broken something. You might think that must have scared me off. Unfortunately, it didn't. I'd already told some of my friends I would do it with them, and I couldn't let them down. Again and again, I subjected myself to that torture because I wanted to be liked. My girlfriend don't. I found myself upping my dosage of my ADHD medication. I liked how it made me feel, confident and happy, and the music sounded great. Of course, the come down became worse and worse, which only made me crave it more. My parents were not oblivious to what was going on. They saw the missing pills, the failing grades, the lack of effort in basketball, the more questionable friends. All of this led to more fights. Junior year of high school was when I started to drink. All my friends had already started. I was kind of a late bloomer in that regard. From the get-go, I knew I liked how it made me feel. But the best thing about it was its availability. I had, however, told myself that I was only going to use weed and psychedelics. The ADHD medication didn't count because it was prescribed. But alcohol was breaking that promise to myself. But it's just alcohol. Everyone drinks alcohol. In order to get drinks for me and for my friends, I started to steal booze from my parents. I justified it by choosing not to think about it. Soon, at parties, I was supplying the Adderall and the booze and the weed, and these were turning into drug fests. Someone I knew was buying drugs off the deep web, and so I started to buy more and more. Psychedelics at first. Well, MDMA, but that's kind of a psychedelic. Ketamine, same. Each time I bought one of these drugs, I would use it until it was entirely gone. And each time I bought something, my qualms about what I was getting were dampened. Somewhere along the way, I stopped caring about what it was I was getting, and I just wanted more. To fund my drug habit, I was now stealing cash from my parents. They stopped trusting me, and they didn't like to leave their wallets around their own home. I was sent to rehab, but the whole time it felt ridiculous, like I wasn't one of those people. I knew what I was doing. It was senior year, and I officially no longer cared what it was I was doing. I was skipping class, drinking before school, stealing drugs and money. Through some magic, I was able to get into college, Roger Williams in Rhode Island. Before I went, I had this conversation with my mom, where she seemed scared. She wasn't sure if I was ready. Truth be told, I think I was scared too. But I was more scared of what people would think if I didn't go. It's freshman year of college, and at first, it's amazing. I'm making lots of new friends and I'm doing well in all my classes. Things are going well. But then one day I realized that I could just not go to my class, that no one would be there to yell at me for not going. I found that instead of going to class, I really enjoyed staying in my room, popping an extra Adderall and playing video games. That was the beginning of the end for me. I stopped leaving my room. I was using more and more stimulants, and in order to sleep, I was drinking and using downers. I ordered more semi-legal drugs from the internet. This was some scary stuff. I would take a little, and I liked how it made me feel, carefree and confident, and so I would take a little more, and then a little more, and then it was all gone, and I was shivering in my bed, in a cold sweat. I was withdrawing from this stuff, and it was bad. I felt cold, and my stomach hurt. But overwhelming me throughout it all was this sense of impending doom, as if every magnified sound I heard coming from the hallways was a whisper of my inadequacy. I couldn't eat, and I couldn't sleep. All I could do was lie on my stomach in my bed, hold my phone in front of my eyes, and watch YouTube. This doesn't scare me away. In fact, I just start using more and more. I no longer have any hope for the future. All I can do is every day is wake up to use stimulants and go to sleep with the help of alcohol. I am living for the next moment, hoping that in it I can find something, anything, to rid me of how I feel. My future, when I dare to think of it, consists of death or jail. At the end of the year, there's a dorm party. My hallmates haven't seen me in a while, but I decide to join. Of course, if I'm to show my face, to talk to people, I must first destroy my mind. I start drinking. I have some cocaine I snort. My dealer friend has some Klonopin. I buy some all. And yet, no matter how much I drink or snort or throw down my throat, I just cannot get out of my own head. Nothing is enough. I go to my dealer's room, but he's not there. I steal the rest of his money, and I do it all. I keep drinking. I don't think I wanted to die, but I also didn't care very much if I did. Eventually, I can't take it anymore. The drugs and the drink aren't working. I look at myself and ask, who am I? I call my dad in tears. I tell him I need help. My dad came out that very day. We put together a plan. I'm gonna start seeing a therapist on campus. I'll send him a picture of my medication every day, and we'll wait till I get home. They still don't know the extent of my lies, the failed classes, the wasted and stolen money. The plan works for a few days, but I just cannot resist those little blue pills. Now I'm home, and it's been a week since I've had any medication or any drugs. I've spent that time essentially in bed and hiding from my parents, from everyone. I simply cannot take the guilt, shame, resentment, and fear that is bubbling inside me. I run to my brother's room, who's prescribed Adderall. I start shoveling it down my throat. I'm high for 3 days. On the final day, I haven't slept at all, and the sun is coming up. And that same feeling of doom creeps into my soul. I'm supposed to have lunch with my grandfather that day. I text my mom I'm not feeling well and to cancel my lunch. She knocks on my door, and I'm afraid she can see how deeply messed up I am. So I tell her a little lie, that I was coming down with something, but it wasn't a big deal. She is understanding. At this point, she has read books on addiction. She sits on the floor of my room, and we start to talk. She asks me about the year, and slowly things just start falling apart. I start crying, and the lack of sleep is causing me to forget what I just said. She is suspicious that something is more wrong with me than I am letting on. My dad comes home, and he joins. He closes the door so my little brother doesn't have to hear. Over the course of a few hours, they realize something was wrong with me. They're afraid to leave me alone, both for my own safety and theirs. They're afraid I'll rummage through their wallets, the safes, their medicine cabinets. They're afraid I'll take more drugs, that I'll have a seizure, that I'll die, that they'll lose their son. My parents were planning on seeing a comedian in Rhode Island that day, about an hour and a half drive away. They take me with them because they don't want to let me ruin their time together, and they can't leave me alone. Over the course of that day and the next, between my beaten down defenses, due to the withdrawal and the lack of sleep, the truth starts to come out. I'm shocked to find them pragmatic about the whole thing. Of course, they're angry and they don't trust me, but their number one concern is what to do to help. We agree on a plan. I'm going to drop out of Roger Williams and enroll in a community college near them so that I can continue my education while being close to home. I wasn't ready that first time, but maybe this time I will be. I'll attend outpatient rehab 5 times a week and go to AA. This works great. I'm happy for maybe the first time in 4 years. I find that there is hope, that people have been worse than me and succeeded. I started to take my classes and rehab seriously. I soak it all in, and I find that I enjoy learning. I started talking with one of my professors after class, and she recommended I join the honors college. In AA, I make a group of friends who take me to meetings and care about me. Things stay a lot like this for a while. The next semester, I take a statistics class. I failed last time, and I was so nervous again. At first, it goes really well. I even enjoy it. But then, as soon as things start to get hard, I tell myself, maybe I don't have to go today. so I sit in my car instead of going to class. Every day on my drive to school, I drive by the smoke shop, and in capital neon letters every day is the word kratom. Kratom is an opioid. It's legal because it hasn't been banned yet. I know about it, although I've never tried it. One day, when I'm in my car skipping stats, I decide it's a good idea to go to the smoke shop. Without thinking much about it, I buy the kratom. Maybe I tell myself that it's legal. Maybe I tell myself I don't care. Very quickly after buying it, I find that I was exactly where I was before. To buy more drugs, I start stealing from my parents again. They find out and we start fighting. I'm lying about my grades. Every time I get caught, I tell them I will stop, and I do. The next few months are the same liminal space. I relapse, they find out, I stop for a few days. Each time I relapse, it's worse than the last. At first, it's kratom, then it's cocaine, and finally it's opiates. I relapsed again with stolen money. My parents found out. I think this time it must have been my mom's turn, because she knocked on my door. She gave me this look. She was, of course, scared and angry, but she just looked defeated. She said, "Really? You're going to UMass in less than 2 months." For whatever reason, this hit me. It was the final straw, so to speak. I realized that if I wanted to have a decent, happy life, I simply could not use drugs. Some people could, but I am not one of them. I started working out, I got a job, and went to AA. It was time for me to transfer to UMass, and things were going well. I was reading again, devouring books, making up for lost time, perhaps. I got into philosophy, and in my neuroscience class, I would argue with and ask question after question to my professor. He engaged with me, and he encouraged my thinking. I fell in love with the subject matter, and I asked him what his research was and what his lab work done. When he told me, and I was so close to real science, something I was always enthralled with, I was amazed and I wanted it. After much pestering from me, he eventually conceded and asked if I wanted to join his lab. That's when my life really started. After leaving the lab one day, I remember thinking that I could do this for the rest of my life. Now, thanks to his continued encouragement and belief in me, I'm about to pursue a PhD in neuroscience at the University of California, San Diego, where I will be able to continue to give myself to something that I love. And thanks to the undying support from my sponsor, my friends, some new, some old, and above all, my parents and brothers. I've been sober for just about 3 years, and my life today is beyond anything I ever could have imagined. At first, I gave my devotion to my intelligence, then to my basketball skills, then to my social status, then to drugs, and they ate me alive. Today, I devote myself to a few things. The group of AA, which gives me so much, my family and my friends, and science. I find worship to be quite difficult, but today, I believe in something bigger than myself.
It's not an always easy thing to share when you're in front of a group of people sharing how you failed over and over and over again, and how you disappoint the people that you love the most. Guys, we bring these speakers up here for a reason. Max shared his testimony, he's pouring out his heart so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. He's now on the right path, and we're so thankful for him. We love this man. He's a part of RBTV family. He will always be a part of RBTV family. He'll always be a part of this family. But guys, listen to the message. It can start with a very small decision that you make. That's how it always begins. He mentioned it. He said it. It starts with something so small. It's a little slip. That's how it begins. And you brush it off. I'm still good. A little more dip, and a little more slip. And you brush that off. And all of a sudden, you're on the spiral downwards. That's what takes place. So if you can listen to what he's saying, what he's sharing, he's pouring his heart out. He's here to help you avoid some of his mistakes. And look at how God is blessing him now. Look at how he's turned his life around now to come forward. And again, it's not an easy thing to do, but to be able to come forward and share it with you all. Again, a round of applause for Max Henry. Chris, what do we have next?